My name is EMILIANA Castillo, but I'm also known as Nelly Castle. And I was born in the Bronx, but I've lived on Staten Island since I'm 3 years old. My favorite place on Staten Island would have to be the neighborhood where I grew up, which is STATEN. And I'd have to say my home, my house, because I grew up there pretty much my whole life, 24 years. Art, music, dance, my whole life is art. Everything that I do, it's my best friend. And it's also, for me, a way to communicate many things. It's a way to teach, it's a way to learn, it's a way of life. A lot of my art comes from a place of a lot of bad experiences that I've made good in my life, and I've transformed. And that's why I feel like it's important as well to be a teacher, because I've been able to work with kids who, you know, have many difficulties. But art and music and dance and all these things, you know, are such an important part of I think everyone needs art in their life, you know? You can really overcome so many things.
Yeah, I feel
like I would like to be remembered by my art, you know, because art lives forever. I won't live forever, but I believe that art lives forever. My father is from Chile. Every time I've gone, it's life-changing.
in what ways?
Well, Chile has always been a big part of my life growing up. It's definitely shaped who I am and what I believe in. My father was exiled here from Chile. So Chile, you know, since I'm a kid, has always been such a big part. And being an artist is really important for me because that in itself, you know, is such a powerful tool in terms of getting a certain message across. I think I could talk to you about a lot of, you know, my political ideas, but I think that the experience I've had as a woman is the experience that a lot of women have had. And some of them never get through it, if that makes sense. And, you know, I just feel like I want to, you know, lend to that by being a teacher, by being an artist, by being an MC, and just kind of sharing my experience and the way I dealt with it, or dealt with just being a woman in the world, being an artist, you know, being from Staten Island, being from, you know.
My name is DEMETRIUS FELDER, but I usually go by Demetrius, which is my middle name. Most people just call me Demi. I grew up in the Bronx, South Bronx, you know what I mean? Favorite place on Staten Island, I'd have to say, is definitely the North Shore, Martini Red. The first thing that comes to mind. Yeah. How do I use my work, and what kind of stories do I try to tell? Every painting is unique. I think a lot of people are surprised how much research I put into a painting and the meaning of it. Like the project that we were talking about, which was the Do You Know Me project, was actually heavily influenced and based off of Stanley Milgram's Small World project. You ever heard the term 6 degrees of separation? Stanley Milgram was a sociologist who had come up with that term. What he did was he tried to map out the connections that we have to one another. And through a very clever experiment, which I'm not going to get into too much, he realized that essentially anyone on average has 6 degrees of separation from anyone else in a given circle. The very interesting thing that he realized, though, is that in order for this experiment to work, you have to identify certain people. He called connectors. Now, these are people with above average social circles, right? When I first got here, one of the first people that kind of like befriended me was Candace. And Candace, I identified almost immediately as a connector. Like, she just knew everyone, and then through her, I met Mike Macklin, and so forth and so on. So when I started the project, those were the first people that I painted. And the idea behind that was to kind of map out the social circles in Staten Island, because it's strange, the North Shore at that point, the North Shore was still congealing, you know, it wasn't really what it is now. And I was very interested to see where people were coming from and who knew who. With this particular piece, it came from the absurd, but it ended up being something way more profound for me personally. When I was a kid in high school, I loved anime, still do, love manga, still do. And my knowledge of Japan was based solely off of these entertainment mediums, that and Kung Fu. So, you know, I know it was completely absurd, but to an extent, I had this stereotype where basically every week a giant robot would attack Japan and someone had to save it. And so I had came up with this concept back then. And then as I grew older and more wiser, and I realized that one day I actually want to go to Japan, I realized that, like, you still have, like, these stereotypes that, like, you know, all Japanese women are submissive, and all these negative stereotypes that will stop you from actually appreciating and understanding their culture. So in a lot of ways, this painting to me now is about those stereotypes battling and obliterating themselves, so I can go there with a clean slate. And a lot of my work stems from that, deeply from the psychological, and then it goes from there. It's kind of like, how can I visually illustrate that, you know. I mean, at heart, I would consider myself a portrait artist, most inspired by people.